review and take a look through some of the basic themes of this course. I'm going to start with politics, walk you through the basic structures. Your task is going to be how you connect those basic structures to the different regions and figure out what goes on in India, what goes on in China, what goes on in Latin America, and so on and so forth. We're going to start with politics. We're going to start with the basic progression of political organization of people. We start with the family clan unit. That's true from hunting and gathering all the way through early agriculture. We then see people join together and form villages. Eventually, villages grow, populations increase, they take over more territory, and we see urban areas begin to form. Once we get an urban area, we have people who specialized in labor, we've done all that sort of stuff. So things are starting to get to be larger and they need more territory. We also see the creation of what are called city-states. All right, so these are cities that also have taken over the surrounding area. They've kicked the agriculture out to the periphery, and in the center is where manufacturing is going on, trade is going on, markets form, etc., etc. Usually you'll also find that's where the king has his residence, or whoever's in charge of the region will have its council of elders meet in the center of all of that. From there we see the development of kingdoms, and once we've taken over kingdoms, it's a short hop from a kingdom to an empire. Eventually the empires fall apart and the system collapses. The political system itself will dissolve, and it depends on how far. Sometimes they go all the way back to the village level and they start all again. Sometimes it's dissolving to urban localities or city-states. Sometimes it fragments into smaller kingdoms. But either way, we continue to see throughout the time periods we've studied a steady build toward the notion of having an empire again and again and again. All right, so that's the basic structure and progression. When we're looking at the governing structure, again, it breaks down by the levels. So when we're talking about family or clan, we're looking at generally the eldest, usually male, but sometimes female, but it's the person who's lived the longest who's in charge. Once they start gathering multiple families in one place as in villages, we end up with councils of the eldest people making the decisions. Occasionally it'll be a council of strongest, but that doesn't happen very often. It's really much more the council of elders. Eventually, once you have a city, you have a governing body of some kind. Usually it's going to be built out of councils of elders, but not always. Sometimes you'll find the strongest warrior will seize control, take charge of everything, and that's the end of that. It's a short hop from that to get to having a monarch, to having a dictator, to having some kind of a formalized council, whether it's elected or appointed. This is where we see that start to show up in the city-state. Obviously a kingdom, hence the name king. We have a monarch. An empire, we have an emperor. These are almost always dynastic. They pass down within a family from male to male to male. It is very rare that you find women there, the exception, not the rule. We also see, usually somewhere around kingdom, empire, but sometimes in city-states, the formation of trained administrators who create what's called a bureaucracy, where we have folks who have become appointed to do government work based on their training, their education, or their background. If we take a look at laws, generally in families and clans there are no laws that are written down. We're talking about legal structures and systems and punishment and enforcement. That doesn't happen in the family. Maybe your family does, my family doesn't. We have behavioral norms, things that we expect people to do, things that we'll tolerate, things that we won't tolerate, and the family deals with it. Sometimes when we have councils of elders, we do start to see some laws form in the villages. Usually they revolve around private property. This is my stuff, not your stuff. You can't take my stuff. There may be some religious overlap here. It may be that the laws are structured in such a way that we're trying to get people to worship or behave in a certain way that will please the gods and help our harvest and all that sort of stuff. Once we hit the urban setting and city-states, we find more and more laws. They get codified. They're systemic. All right, they apply to everybody. Usually, again, property is the focus. How do I protect my stuff from other people? But we also see class status. Laws are written to reinforce a person's class. The upper class has more privileges and prerogatives than the lower class. Again, sometimes this is tied to religion, but not always. And then by the time we get kingdoms and emperors, we see kind of a split occur. Most kings say, I'm in charge, I'm the king, I make the laws, and it's my whim. What I want is the law, and that's fine. You all have to deal with it, or you die. Or we see highly structured, complex, systematized legal structures, usually enforced through a clear magistrate system, judicial system, police forces come about. Usually they're basic, it's you do it, you get a cookie, you don't, I bash you with an axe. You cut off a hand, you die somehow painfully, publicly, so that everybody knows not to break that law. They are rarely tied to religion, but it depends. If the monarch is deriving his power from a religious authority, then you will see legal systems that are tied to religion. So when that does happen, the ties are very strong, they're very tight, and they're very complexly interwoven. The Islamic Sharia law is a good example of that. And then lastly, the role of conflict in politics, war. When does war happen? Generally, families don't really go to war. They will raid for food, they will attack another family nearby to take stuff if they think they have more than the others, or if they have particular need. But so warfare doesn't really occur much here. Again, same with villages, you do see raids, people carry off cattle, try to steal or kidnap women, children, labor sources, that sort of thing, but we're not talking organized warfare at the village level. Once we get to the city-states, it's become more common. We're looking at the possession of territory, taking over new farmland, expansion due to population pressure. There's usually you're going to see a formation of a specific warrior class. People whose job it is to fight is going to happen somewhere in the urbanization mode, and they're going to form their own distinctive band of society. And then by the time we get to kingdom and empire, we have frequent conflict. Warfare is normed. It is a regular event. There are professional status armies, conscripted peasants. It is about territory, it is about stuff still, it is about control. It is also about the migration of outsiders, keeping people out, and sometimes keeping people in. So by the time we hit kingdoms and empires, warfare is a regular established pattern. So there you have the major components. We have the progression of political system development, we have the structural government, we have the laws and the formation and enforcement of laws, and we have the conflict and the normalization of conflict.